All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Champagne, Manager of Mobility Programs here at Colleges and Institutes Canada. Welcome to the session today. Bienvenue to this first knowledge sharing session. Just to introduce myself and my colleagues, so my portfolio includes managing the Outbound Student Mobility Program here at Colleges and Institutes Canada with the support of my colleagues across the organization. And more specifically, Marie-Ève Bérubé and Martin Carlson, both senior program officers working on this particular program. Hi, Martin, Marie-Ève. So we're delighted to have you join us today for this first session related to outbound mobility. Virtual mobility has emerged as an important innovation to maintain engagement with international partners and to create more accessible programming for students. So the purpose of this session is to facilitate the exchange of ideas, lessons learned, and best practices. We're grateful to our presenters from George Brown College, Selkirk College, and Collèges who will elaborate on different aspects or elements of virtual mobility programming in the context of projects funded through the program's Innovation Fund. So before we get started, I'd like to go over some logistics, followed by some additional information just to put into context the session and to provide some quick updates related to the next phase of the program. So first of all, today's session will last for 60 minutes and will be recorded. So your microphones will be muted throughout, and we encourage you to ask questions of presenters in the chat box. When you do, please indicate who your question is for. Simultaneous interpretation is also available. So it was important to us to ensure that we could share knowledge at a national level across the country. And so to enable this function, you can select the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred language. So just a quick overview of the agenda today. Before we get started, I'd just like to provide, again, some context related to the program and some of what we've been able to achieve together over the course of 2020 and some quick perspectives on the next phase of the program. So we're very grateful to have colleagues from George Brown College, Selkirk College, Collèges, who will each deliver 10-minute presentations, followed by a period of questions and questions for the presenters. So just a quick overview for those who are not yet familiar with the program. The Outbound Student Mobility Pilot Program was announced at the end of 2019 and is a key element of the Government of Canada's international education strategy. It's overseen by Employment and Social Development Canada and is intended to help students to acquire in-demand skills as part of their studies through study or work abroad opportunities. The program objectives include widening access and equity to participation, especially for target group students, being, in this case, Indigenous students, students with disabilities, and students from low-income families. So we know that few institutions currently collect disaggregated data related to demographics of participating students, and developing better reporting mechanisms through this program will be an important part of our objectives. Another objective is to diversify the destination countries where students choose to study or work abroad. So in 2018-2019, colleges and institutes reported sending students to over 40 countries, most commonly to France, the United States, Japan, Korea, and countries in Europe. And finally, an important objective was to test innovative approaches to reduce barriers to study and work abroad. So though our intention was to launch the full program in the spring of 2020, we pivoted throughout the summer with the support of Employment and Social Development Canada, designed and launched an innovation fund to allow colleges to test different tools, supports, and services to build inclusive study, work abroad opportunities, adjust programming to a COVID-19 environment, and to serve as a stepping stone for the full implementation of the program. The call for proposals was very well received. We funded 69 projects across 46 colleges and institutes covering a range of themes, including virtual mobility, marketing and recruitment, research on reducing barriers, risk management, and wraparound supports. As many as 3,000 students will have directly benefited from innovation projects. Knowing that virtual mobility would continue to feature prominently throughout 2021 and that so many innovation projects have supported the development of virtual mobility projects on campuses, we decided to focus this first knowledge sharing session on that topic. So what is virtual mobility? It can be defined in different ways, but generally it is an inclusive approach to international education that uses technology to connect students with peers, employers, colleagues across the globe. Through their participation, students gain critical in-demand skills, including cross-cultural communication skills, adaptability, digital literacy, critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork skills. When we launched the Innovation Fund in October 2020, we asked applicants or institutions to complete a survey. At that time, 42% of colleges and institutes had pivoted their outbound mobility programming to virtual modalities. And as of March 2021, in engaging with some of our colleges who are implementing innovation projects, we understand that few are anticipating offering physical mobility opportunities in September, with 55% anticipating or hoping to get back to physical mobility in January, and still 37% looking at beyond March 31st. So with that in mind, I'd like to just provide a quick overview of some of the next steps with regards to the implementation of the full program. We've been working closely with Employment and Social Development Canada and our implementing partners at Universities Canada to chart a course for the program throughout 2020 and beyond. We're pleased to note that the federal government has agreed to extend the pilot program by 1 year until March 31st, 2025 to compensate for disruptions caused by COVID-19. We've also received confirmation that funding outside of that which was dedicated for innovation can be used to support student participation in virtual mobility experiences. So Colleges and Institutes Canada and Universities Canada are waiting for final confirmation from ESDC on next steps in terms of timing and funding for the remaining 4 years, but we anticipate receiving that very soon. So in the meantime, we are aiming to launch a request for proposals in the coming months. Institutions would have approximately 8 weeks to submit applications for projects that could span multiple years. Virtual mobility projects will be prioritized in 2021, but colleges and institutes will have the flexibility to transition projects to physical mobility when possible. Funding will be available for direct financial and wraparound supports to students, with some funding available to support institutions in the implementation of their projects. And some additional funding is remaining for innovation. So I appreciate that many of you may have questions for us with regards to next steps. Please include them in the chat box. We will review them carefully as we work through the next steps, and we'll be sure to include answers in the FAQs when we launch the next phase of the program. Again, the purpose of today's session is to facilitate the exchange of ideas, lessons learned, best practices among institutions. So we encourage you to ask questions of our presenters in the chat box throughout the session. And please, again, identify your questions for who your question is for. So my colleague Marie-Ève will moderate the question and answer period later on. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Martin to get us started with the substance of today's session. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Bienvenue tout le monde. 59 participants, excellent turnout today from all across our great nation, all these time zones. we have an interesting mix. And one of the best things about working at CICAN that I find with 135 members is incredible variety and approach and the strength of our college system in Canada. So it's really great. Today we have George Brown to start out, a large college in Toronto, 3 campuses of 30,000 plus students. Then we have a regional group in a college set up in West Kootenays, a region of BC, that's Selkirk College with Nicola Valley Institute of Technology near Merritt, BC, a smaller center around 1,500 students. And then we have the collège, the Cégep system in Quebec presenting their approach as well. With there's one presenting, but it's a consortium of 2 Cégeps in Montreal. So it'll be a very interesting session today. I think we'll get started with, so we're dealing with 3 specific topics. Today, George Brown College, Ada Viveiros, who is administrator of the International Field Education Study Abroad Group at George Brown, will be speaking on increasing access, equity, and diversity in virtual international work integrated learning placement opportunities. So I'll call on Ada. Welcome, and we look forward to seeing your presentation. Please add your comments in for Ada, your questions, and she can address those in the moderated section, question and answer period. So I get the first presenter up. So Ada, you can share your screen and we can get going with your presentation. You have 10 minutes. So near the end, about a minute in to the end, I'll just give you a heads up 2 minutes before or so. So I'll let you know how the time's going.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aida Viveiros. I work at George Brown College in Toronto, and I work in the Work Integrated Learning, Exponential Education, and Global Mobility team. And I'm going to be focusing on, I'm going to be focusing on our virtual international WIL pilot, and our focus was increasing access, equity, and diversity. So basically, the approach that George Brown took was that we partnered with Absolute Internship, which is a service provider. We successfully piloted online work integrated learning opportunities with host companies in France, Spain, Portugal, Singapore, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. And that the period was from January 1st, 2021 until March 31st, 2021. This is the first time that GBC did remote international WIL. So all of it is new to us. And so we're still learning. The pilot gave priority to 11 students that traditionally are underrepresented in mobility programming. For George Brown defined underrepresented students as low income, students with disability, Black, Indigenous, or people of color, so the BIPOC community. That's how we defined underrepresented. Now, in terms of key successes within our pilot, one interesting thing is the majority of our students, all of them are underrepresented, but the majority of the students identified in 2 underrepresented groups. For example, the majority were low income, plus they were identified as being part of the BIPOC community. So that was an interesting result that we got from our pilot, and it could be because we're in downtown Toronto as well, so the diversity, etc. So that we were able to, majority of our students are in 2 underrepresented groups. The next thing that was a success for George Brown College in the pilot is, for the last couple of years, we've been doing a cultural intelligence CQ program, and we were able to integrate an element of that program into the virtual remote opportunity. So we were able to virtually deliver the intercultural development inventory, the IDI, and plus an individualized debriefing, all virtually, with our IDI administrator. So we were able to do that in this pilot. The next thing we were able to do is we were able to deliver tailored supports and training to students. So before, during, and after, all online. But one thing we found out very quickly from our experience is the Zoom overload. Students felt overwhelmed. And so we had to make sure that the supports that we provided, the platform we provided, were easy. We weren't taxing on students. and that they got the right supports at the right time, and that there was troubleshooting. We were always there to support them throughout the WIL process. Absolute, our partner, as well as George Brown, as well as the company host. So we're very proactive making sure that students were well supported. The last thing that we did quite well is that we were able to integrate all our international WIL placements going forward using the outcome platform. So it improves data collection as well as allows us to have evidence-based approach to when we're reporting how are we doing in international mobility. So that was important. The other thing, for all the success we've had so far, I think the key to it is collaboration. We were able to collaborate with many stakeholders to make this happen. For example, our external stakeholder was Absolute Internship, and they were lovely. They were flexible. They were adaptable, proactive. Any issues we were able to resolve quite quickly. In terms of our internal stakeholders, we, like George Brown Colleges, the way we do WIL, it's a decentralized system. So we relied on working with the WIL offices across the college in promoting and making sure that underrepresented students knew about this virtual WIL opportunity. We worked with the Accessible Learning Department, as well as counseling, as well as Indigenous education, where they helped us promote through the Indigenous community within George Brown. Counseling student services were there to support students. Career services were great because they helped us with the IDI implementation throughout. And then the new partnership we did, or collaboration we did in the pilot, was the Black Student Success Network. So going forward, we hoping to deepen our relationship with the network, and they were able to make sure all Black students within the GBC community knew about the opportunity. Now, I just want to turn. I want to share a success story. We had a student. Her name is Erin McCain. She's a third-year Indigenous student in our business administration program, and she worked remotely with Sweets in the City, which is a UK-based personalized candy gift business. And she came back to me and she was saying, like, how she managed doing a remote international work placement. And she said, because of the time zone, because time zone differences is a big challenge when you're doing a remote WIL opportunity. She said that you had to have excellent time management and discipline. And students have to be motivated to do these WIL placements. So they have to be really go-getters to be successful within the remote experience. Now, I just have a link so you can read Erin's experience more thoroughly, and I'll put it in the chat box for everyone to see as well after my presentation, so you can have a read. The next thing is the key takeaways and future discussion. I think we had to be flexible. Flexibility in a pilot is key. We had to make adjustments. For example, at first, we said, okay, we're not going to place students in the UK and France. We want to look at the other countries that students don't generally go to. But then we had to think about this and say, because of COVID-19, the lockdowns in different jurisdictions throughout the world, we had to take it from a student success perspective. And with our partner, we had to look at where were the best opportunities for these WIL experiences. And if they happen to be in the UK, so be it. But the majority of our experiences were in countries that were not traditionally where Canada sends students, but we had to make some exceptions, and we were comfortable doing that because of the student success piece. The next thing is that we think is that both the students and the companies need strong information management, virtual collaboration, being creative, problem solving, and navigating digitally, given the different time zones, right? So these things are key. The next thing is what I've been thinking about as well as WIL practitioners across Canada, we have to look at, we need more tools like the work placement host as well as the practitioners. We need more remote learning resources on how to best onboard students, how to motivate them effectively, and how to give thoughtful feedback. The next thing I want to, for discussion throughout the group today, is how do we promote access, equity, diversity in future mobility programming? For example, if you look at what's happened over the last year, Black Lives Matter, the social movements, agitation, that people want change and they want diverse groups within education and more access building. I keep thinking about what will the future of international mobility look like. And what I'm thinking is, just initially, I'm thinking is that there's going to be a blend of virtual. I don't think virtual is going to remain with us for years to come and may enhance and improve in different aspects. And there will be an in-person opportunities for students to go abroad. But when we're really looking for bringing down the barriers, and especially college students that are shorter programs, so they need sometimes more shorter experiences that fit within their life reality, we have to look creatively how maybe we're going to do a blend version where maybe a partial part of the experience will be virtual. Another portion could be, we send them abroad and they physically go to the site and gain the international competencies that we want these students to gain. That's why we do this, to ensure that students get these experiences and thus improve, the Canadian workforce and skills, etc. So that's basically.
About a minute. Sorry, just about a minute to wrap up, please.
Okay, that was my presentation. Okay. So I just, look forward to the discussion and seeing what other institutions are doing. But we have done well with, we're happy with the virtual will pilot, and we hope to actually keep doing that for the summer and then the fall as well.
Excellent, very interesting, and I'm sure there will be lots of questions. Please post your questions in the chat for Aida. This is an interesting area and a big issue discussion, the idea of the hybrid model. So I'm sure that'll come up again. Our next presentation, we're now going from central Canada out to the west coast. We're actually, a western province, West Kootenay. This area where Selkirk is located is a mountainous area, southeastern region of British Columbia. So the Selkirk model is interesting. They have different campuses, 6 campuses and 2 learning centers serving 2,700 full-time students, almost 12,000 students a year. Castlegar, Nelson, Trail, and Grand Forks. And they're also, as I said at the beginning, in partnership with Merritt, which is a small center close to the US border in the south of BC, about an hour west of Kelowna and an hour south of Kamloops, if you know the larger centers in BC. So we're very interested. The consortium projects have been very interesting this time around. So we look forward to this presentation. I'd like to introduce Danny. Danny Beattie is the Manager of International Education and Development at Selkirk. Please go ahead, Danny, you're free to present.
Thank you very much, Martin. Hello, everyone. As Martin introduced me already, I won't have to repeat myself, but I'll just introduce the rest of the panel. We have 2 presenters today from Selkirk College. We have Emily Canbork. She's an international student recruiter, and she's also our overseas projects coordinator. And we have Rhonda Belchik. She's an instructor in our human services department here at Selkirk College. And I'd also like to introduce, although they won't be presenting today, 2 partners from Nicola Valley Institute of Technology. That's Marg Honer and Heather Klatt. Marg is the department head of co-op education at Nicola Valley, and Heather is a health programs instructor and clinical placement coordinator. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Emily, who will start the presentation.
Thanks, Danny, very much. Bonjour, hello, everyone. My name is Emily. I work at Selkirk College, and I help coordinate our international projects here. We were fortunate enough to run this project, Outbound Student Mobility Pilot Program, entitled Mobility and Access, Virtual Study Abroad for Health and Human Service Students with Barriers. We did this project in consortium with NVIT, Nicola Valley Institute of Technology. We found that a lot of their health and human service programs were in alignment with ours, so it was a great opportunity to collaborate. Our main goal in this project was to provide international mobility opportunities to our health and human service students with barriers, mainly students who identify as self-identify as Indigenous, are low income or coming from low income families, or students with disabilities. We ended up working with two different overseas partners for this project, one being ROC in Jamaica and the other one being Sunrise Center in Uganda. ROC we had worked with previously in a variety of different capacities, and they are based out of Jamaica doing economical and social development work. And Sunrise was a new partner to us in Uganda, our grassroots organization who assists in sustainable education and healthcare for rural communities in their area. So we were really excited to develop this new relationship with Sunrise because we've been looking for opportunities to connect with them over the past few years. So the main goal of our project was to have our human service students work with ROC and work with the students who were still learning online in Jamaica as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So these were students from our education assistant community support system programs, as well as our social service students. And they were working in addition in a gender-based violence program with Sunrise. On the other spectrum, our health students coming from a nursing background and a rural pre-medicine background were working with Sunrise with the nursing faculty and the midwives to kind of learn and assist with them at the clinic. Overall, we had 23 students participate in the program. 100% of these students either identified as Indigenous, were low income, or were having disabilities. So we were really happy with the reach that this project was able to reach. And with that, I will hand it over to Rhonda, who's going to share a little bit more about our successes and our challenges in the project. Rhonda, you're just on mute.
I know, it won't allow me.
Okay.
Hang on.
You're good now, Rhonda.
Okay, great. Thank you. I had a moment of panic there. So yeah, I'm going to talk about some of the outcomes of our project, and I'm going to start with talking about successes. So of course, cultural learning and cross-pollination seems like an obvious outcome for a project like this. I think we certainly achieved that, and there are several examples of what that looked like. So there was a knowledge sharing about traditional healthcare versus holistic healthcare and what the various healthcare systems look like in Canada and Uganda. The students who participated got a really good sense of prenatal and delivery practices, and particularly the role of midwives in the Ugandan healthcare system. And students were able to integrate culturally relevant activities into the activities that they participated in. So for example, some of them facilitated learning sessions for children, and they integrated activities like dance into their sessions. We were fortunate that NVIT staff approached their local school district and had several iPads donated.
Rhonda, sorry to interrupt. You've become very quiet. The first 10 or 20 seconds was great, and you've become very quiet.
Okay, thank you.
And you're muted now. Okay, I've asked you to unmute as a co-host.
Thank you. All right, I'll try to speak up a bit. We had iPads donated, which we sent to Jamaica and Uganda, and that was really a game changer, and that allowed for broader participation and an improved experience for the children, so they didn't have to be crowded around one iPad. It resulted in, the project really resulted in transferable skills and knowledge. So students demonstrated the learning that they gained from the program in their coursework. So they were making links in their classes between the theory and the practice they were seeing in the field. And they also were developing skills relevant to employment, like flexibility, cultural agility, communication, and organization. And finally, this really increased their interest in future international opportunities. So we did a poll this morning. 95% of the students indicated that they felt this experience prepared them for future international experiences. Next slide, please, Emily. So some of the challenges that we experienced, so the technology, as we've just seen, didn't always work as we had hoped it would. There was a late start for the Uganda project because there were internet disruptions as a result of their election, and internet connectivity was particularly poor in some of the rural areas, which impacted the students' experience. Like they couldn't always hear what was being discussed in patient assessments, for example. Time zone differences in scheduling were challenging at times, so Uganda's 11 hours ahead of us. Our students were participating in sessions, sometimes in the wee hours of the morning, to accommodate program times at sunrise, and there were frequent schedule changes and adjustments and course corrections that were needed to make sure we were accommodating the needs of everyone. And the online platform wasn't as conducive to a relational approach sometimes. So Zoom can hamper ability to detect subtle social cues and respond accordingly. And there were times when there were sensitive issues discussed or disclosed, and the students articulated that they felt kind of alone at times sitting behind their computer screens. And so we found that one key component or a key learning was the need for consistent instructor support for the students to be able to debrief and problem solve. And finally, the cultural learning sometimes was overwhelming at times. So our project was condensed into a relatively short period of time, and learning was hampered by technology challenges. And sometimes we had limited time together and a rigorous activity schedule, and there was less opportunity for questions and free discussion. Next slide, Emily, please.
Rhonda, probably try to wrap up. I think you have about 15 or 30 seconds.
Okay, so just a couple of unintended outcomes. High level of collaboration between us and NVIT, and the students really enjoyed connecting with each other and also within their programs, but also interdisciplinary. We had some students really step into leadership. They took their roles very seriously and developed skills needed for leadership and curriculum integration. So this program actually filled a gap where there weren't local practicum placements available because of COVID. They were able to use this opportunity as their practicum. And so it actually became integrated as part of their curriculum. And we had some final session with our students this morning, and one quote I'd like to highlight is a student said it made international work feel real, and it inspired her to continue to work in this setting in other countries. And we had a lot of other positive feedback from the students, but I'm out of time.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Lots there. Yeah, very interesting. And the specific sector focus is interesting in the health sector, and of course, new countries or new areas to be working in. It's always important. We're getting ready for our last presentation. Just to mention, I mean, the technology is the topic. Again, here we're using all this technology. This next presentation from Collèges Outbound in partnership with Cégep Marie Victorine in Montreal is related to virtual reality, and it was described a bit in our briefing note to everybody. Just for everyone's information, the next section, this presentation will be delivered in French. So I would encourage everybody who wants English translation simultaneous to switch. You'll see at the bottom right of your screen a little button that says interpretation, a little globe. Just click that little globe and click English, and you will receive English simultaneous translation. We have an interpreter with us today. So, bienvenue Michel, c'est un grand plaisir d'être ici pour écouter votre présentation. Michel Bruno travaille comme conseillère pédagogique aux activités internationales au Collège Outbound à Montréal. C'est un projet, comme j'ai déjà mentionné, un projet entre Collège Outbound et le Cégep Marie Victorine. Le Collège Outbound à Montréal, c'est connu comme le grand cégep de Montréal. C'est le plus grand de la ville de Montréal. Et c'est plus que 7600 élèves qui participent, qui étudient à le collège. Alors, c'est à vous, Madame Michel. Allez-y.
Merci, merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Alors, je vais parler lentement pour notre traductrice. Notre projet s'appelle, c'est un très long titre, « La réalité virtuelle au service de la mobilité internationale, du recrutement à la sensibilisation aux compétences interculturelles ». Donc, pour nous, ça a été une très belle expérience parce qu'on a travaillé en consortium avec un autre collège, donc le Cégep Marie-Victorin. L'idée, c'était de se mettre ensemble pour développer cette idée-là, mais nos 2 collèges s'inséraient dans un plus grand consortium. Donc, on se retrouvait 6 cégeps du Québec, donc de certaines grandes villes, de certaines plus petites villes, qui ont décidé de travailler sur des outils et on va s'échanger ces outils-là après. Donc, pour nous, c'était vraiment un beau travail de consortium. Donc, notre projet de réalité virtuelle s'inscrit dans le pré-recrutement et les autres projets des autres cégeps dans le consortium se proposaient dans la session avant de partir, pendant le départ et au retour. Eux, ils travaillaient sur des capsules vidéo, donc vous pourrez entendre parler plus tard. Donc, nous, on s'est questionné et on s'est dit, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour aller chercher les jeunes? Si on veut augmenter l'accessibilité, il y a des jeunes qui ne lèvent pas la main quand on propose un projet dans une classe ou quand un enseignant propose un projet. On s'est dit, ces jeunes-là, comment on peut aller les chercher avant de les embarquer dans le processus de recrutement? Donc, on s'est dit, comment interpeller les personnes pour qui la mobilité internationale est peut-être inutile? Comment interpeller les personnes pour qui la mobilité internationale, ce n'est pas quelque chose de possible pour eux? Ils ne se sentent pas que ça peut être une possibilité dans leur parcours. Donc, nous, on est allé vraiment à la source et on s'est dit, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Comment on pourrait faire ça? Peut-être en 5 minutes. Alors, sur l'image que vous voyez, c'est une petite caméra 360 degrés qui nous permet de monter une expérience de réalité virtuelle pour permettre aux jeunes, on s'est dit, on va leur faire une expérience, comme si on voulait les prendre et les amener dans un projet de mobilité pour leur faire voir les avantages que ça pouvait donner. Donc, l'objectif, c'est à travers, vous voyez le petit logo en haut de la présentation, c'est vraiment à travers un casque de réalité virtuelle, créer une activité, un petit vidéo de 5 minutes pour faire vivre une expérience. La réalité virtuelle, c'est vraiment une façon de faire vivre des émotions, de faire vivre une expérience immersive. Donc, la personne se sent dans un scénario et en bougeant sa tête, elle est en contact avec des gens. Donc, notre idée, c'était vraiment de donner une idée à un étudiant de ce que ça pouvait être de se retrouver dans un autre pays, de vivre une déstabilisation, une perte de repères culturels, donc de donner un petit goût pour quelqu'un qui ne saurait pas à quoi ça pourrait servir, entre autres. Donc, on voulait leur faire expérimenter un vrai contexte. En vivant ce scénario-là de réalité virtuelle, on se disait, ce qu'on veut, c'est déclencher un questionnement sur qu'est-ce qui se passe. Déclencher un questionnement réflectif, donc suite aux 5 minutes où est-ce que la personne va avoir vécu l'expérience, la personne enlève le casque et on a un animateur à côté de nous qui va faire le debriefing avec la personne et qui pourra justement utiliser cette expérience-là pour demander, bon, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé pour toi? Aborder les avantages de ce qui vient de se passer. C'était un contexte, il y avait une perte de repères, à quoi ça peut servir. Et en même temps, ouvrir la porte pour dire, bien, les projets de mobilité, voici ce qu'on offre, voici la formation pré-départ qu'on peut donner comme soutien, l'engagement durant le projet et le retour aussi. Donc, vraiment amener le jeune, il a vécu quelque chose, il s'est senti déstabilisé et lui permettre de connecter qu'est-ce que c'était tout ça et qu'est-ce que ça a pu lui apporter dans sa vie au retour aussi. C'est des compétences interculturelles ou de communication interculturelle qui se passeraient et qui pourraient lui être utiles au retour. Donc ça, c'était notre belle intention. Et les défis et les leçons apprises après avoir voyagé très haut dans nos intentions. Donc, nous, on avait le super pouvoir de la technologie. Nous, on pensait qu'on pouvait tout faire à travers le casque. Donc, on s'était vraiment dit, on s'imaginait même rentrer dans un nouveau contexte, avoir des odeurs différentes. Mettons, quand on arrive dans le sud, par exemple, l'humidité qui arrive, donc sentir. On voulait vraiment avoir une sensation visuelle, auditive, de contact, de langage aussi. Donc, on a engagé une firme qui fait des films de réalité virtuelle. Et c'est un peu là qu'on s'est rendu compte que même si on avait des grandes ambitions, on pensait que la technologie pouvait tout faire. La réalité nous a ramené un peu, c'est ça, à ce qu'on pouvait faire maintenant, entre autres en contexte de COVID aussi. Donc, la technologie a des super pouvoirs, mais aussi certaines limites et certaines limites techniques aussi qu'on s'est rendu compte qui nous ont retardé un petit peu dans le projet. Donc, mon premier défi, ce serait ça qu'on nommerait, ce serait d'avoir surestimé probablement le pouvoir de la technologie. Mais en même temps, on s'est rendu compte que ça pouvait nous amener plein d'autres aspects. Donc, on a fait des brainstorming de ça serait quoi notre concept. On avait 10 pages de notes. On travaillait, on travaillait vraiment en équipe. On a consulté même nos collègues du grand consortium. Nous, on s'appelait le bébé consortium. Eux, c'était le grand consortium. Pour vraiment trouver ça allait être quoi notre scénario. Parce qu'on s'est rendu compte que c'est pas juste d'avoir une intention, mais on s'embarquait dans une histoire pour réaliser un film. Et passer un film, moi, je me rappelle, la première rencontre avec notre réalisateur nous a dit « Bon, ben c'est super, toutes vos notes, tout ça, tous vos concepts, qu'est-ce que vous voulez voir? Mais au final, il faut que ça tienne en 2 pages. C'est quoi? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Comment ça finit? » Alors là, nous, ça nous a beaucoup surprise de voir le travail de tous nos concepts pour le ramener à une histoire. Donc, vraiment transformer nos idées en une histoire qui tenait sur 2 pages. Donc, l'expertise de la firme était de faire des films. Pour faire un film, tu n'as pas nécessairement des compétences en interculturel, tu n'as pas nécessairement des compétences sur le contenu. Donc, pour nous, une des grandes leçons, ça a été de se dire, faut pas, quand on fait affaire avec des gens, par exemple, un studio de film, il faut vraiment s'assurer de nous, d'avoir une grande part, de prévoir ça dans notre temps, une part pour le contenu. Donc, nous, heureusement, on avait une psychologue interculturelle dans l'équipe du Cégep Marie-Victorin qui nous a beaucoup aidé à affiner notre scénario. On a eu une très grande implication avec le studio. Il y avait énormément de validation parce que là, on s'est rendu compte qu'on leur a donné tellement d'idées et eux, ils en ont choisi quelques-unes. Mais après ça, ce qui nous revenait comme scénario, parce que nous, après, on voulait être capable de débriefer la personne par rapport aux compétences interculturelles qui s'étaient passées. Donc, il fallait trouver l'histoire qui allait nous permettre de faire ce débriefing-là. Donc, il y a eu énormément de va-et-vient avec la firme. Et c'est une autre leçon qu'on a appris, c'est quand on fait un film, en fait, on a fait un film, une production cinématographique en 3 mois, il n'y a pas grand studio de film qui réalise ça en 3 mois. Donc, c'était une gestion très serrée. On avait des horaires à chaque semaine où est-ce qu'on avait des retours de scénario, on modifiait, ça retournait, tout ça. L'avantage...
Excusez, oui? Michel, il reste comme 30 secondes. Excusez.
Ouais. Parfait. Alors, je vais passer plus vite. Donc, l'avantage, c'est qu'on a travaillé avec un studio qui était vraiment bon au niveau de leur ouverture. Ils voulaient travailler avec nous. Un des contextes qu'on a trouvé, c'était la COVID. Donc, ça, c'est notre scénario où est-ce qu'on a filmé tout ça. Il y avait des masques, mais on a réussi à s'adapter. On voulait intégrer l'inclusion. Donc, dans notre scénario, on a mis des sous-titres aussi. Donc, ça, c'était un autre défi, comment on allait le faire. Et notre grand, là, vous voyez ici sur la feuille, là, ça, c'est notre réalisateur. Rendre tous nos concepts en 1 page, c'était notre grand défi. Et nous, on a tellement mis de détails sur les petits mots pour savoir que ce soit le bon contenu qui passe. Au final, ça, c'est notre comédienne derrière le micro. On se demande, et là, la technologie, il y a eu un délai dû au montage. Donc, on n'a pas pu tester encore avec nos étudiants le résultat final. On va le tester dans les prochaines semaines. Mais on se demande jusqu'à quel point le rendu est égal au scénario qu'on avait fait. Est-ce qu'on ressent ça? Mais heureusement, l'outil d'accompagnement va nous permettre de faire le debriefing. Donc, en conclusion, travail en consortium, vraiment une grande force dans un projet comme ça. Grâce à SICAN, on a pu innover, penser en dehors de la boîte, et ça, c'est vraiment très apprécié. On va bientôt voir l'accueil et la réception chez nos étudiants, puis à venir, une version 2.0 de nouvelles collaborations. Voilà.
OK, merci beaucoup, Michel. Très intéressante. Alors, je passerai maintenant à mon collègue Marie-Ève qui fera la gestion de question and answers. We'll switch now to question and answer period. Marie-Ève, I'm not sure if there are questions. There were definitely comments popping up, but we'll maybe give everyone a moment to process a lot of information. We have this recorded and the presentations can be shared. So yes, please post and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Marie-Ève.
Thank you, Martin. Merci beaucoup, Michel, pour la présentation. Je pense que une des premières questions, en fait, qui s'adresserait justement à Michel, c'est quels étaient les obstacles et les opportunités qui sont ressorties de justement travailler en consortium sur un projet comme celui-ci?
Une opportunité pour nous, ça a été vraiment la force de la création en équipe. Pour nous, il y a eu beaucoup plus d'avantages que d'inconvénients. Le seul petit inconvénient, en fait, c'en est pas vraiment un grand, là, c'était de trouver des moments dans nos agendas très, très, très bouqués des deux côtés où est-ce qu'on allait pouvoir se rencontrer pour analyser le scénario ou revenir et ensuite revenir à l'équipe et nous-mêmes en sous-équipe. Donc, je vous dirais que le temps pour... Mais je vous dirais qu'à refaire, demain matin, on repart dans le même format, là, en consortium. Puis l'avantage, c'est sûr qu'il y avait une psychologue interculturelle dans leur équipe. Donc, même si on était des conseillères qui connaissent quand même bien là, ces domaines-là, avoir quelqu'un de très précis nous a vraiment aidé à focusser sur ce qu'on voulait.
Super, merci beaucoup, Michelle. I would ask the same question to Selkirk College. So what were some of the challenges and opportunities that you faced in the consortium, in managing this project as a consortium?
I would definitely agree with what Michelle said. There were definitely more pros than challenges in this consortium with NVIT. I think we're really fortunate, especially because their student population is primarily Indigenous, and it was really wonderful to get that perspective onto the project. We had some really, really supportive staff working with us, staff that were attending every single meeting that the students were attending at 3 a.m. in the morning with Uganda. So I think having those extra hands on board to have those kind of wraparound support systems for the student was really, really excellent. And it just felt like there were more ideas coming in and it was more collaborative. So we didn't feel kind of so alone in creating this really big project in a short amount of time. So going forward, we'd love to continue partnering with NVIT and other colleges and consortium projects, because we just feel like they create more than we could when we're alone.
Thanks, Emily. So another question to the three colleges, in fact, would be in terms of the recognition of student participation in these virtual experiences. So how was that aspect addressed for those students who participated directly in the project? So perhaps we can start with George Brown College.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question? Because I was having a little technical difficulties.
No problem. So what were, in what ways actually did or will students who participated directly in the project receive recognition or credits in these for these virtual experiences?
Well, they've done this all for a will credit. So they're going to, they're going to get their work integrated learning credit. They need that to graduate. They're also, when we come together as a group, they're going to be recognized as a group with, the college, etc., the departments, where like the story that I posted on, that was just one of the first stories to come out from the pilot. So we're highlighting, student success and the fact that students can do this remotely, because the pandemic, what's happened in our college is because of COVID, a lot of students deferred placements. They were supposed to do placements. They didn't feel comfortable going out. So then, and because we can't send students physically away, we had to, provide a different alternative. And this was our alternative, safe from home. And then they can have this opportunity. Also, we're going to give them, certificate of participation and completion of the pilot. So, they can have that for their portfolios, etc. So, we're really strong in student support and recognition. So, we think so far the experience for the students are that they've enjoyed the experience, even with the technical challenges, the time zone challenges, and they've really benefited from that.
Thank you, Ada. So I'll ask, I guess, the same question to Emily.
So very similar to Ada, we acknowledged their completion kind of in 3 different ways. The first way was awarding them with a certificate of completion, which we did over Zoom with our partners as kind of like a very brief award ceremony. The second was a lot of these students, as Rhonda mentioned, were able to actually use these credits and these times towards their practicum. As a result of COVID, a lot of community placements didn't take students, so they were able to use these hours and receive credit for their practicum placements. And thirdly, we had designated a specific amount of honorariums for our students who participated in the project. So a large part of our budget was for those honorariums to be granted to students after they completed the project.
Thanks, Emily. Donc, Michel, de votre côté, si les étudiants participaient dans un projet qui inclut la réalité virtuelle, comment est-ce que le collège ferait pour faire la reconnaissance de la participation des étudiants dans ce style de projet-là?
Pour l'instant, nos étudiants, on les reconnaît pour contribuer à la construction de l'outil. Donc, dans le processus, on fait des focus group. Donc, c'est vraiment dans cette idée-là qu'il y a une reconnaissance qui aide à bâtir l'outil qui va être utilisé plus tard. Mais on ne l'a pas encore utilisé. Donc, pour l'instant, je ne m'avancerai pas sur les prochaines formes de reconnaissance.
Parfait, merci Michel. So there's now another question for Ada. Was new curriculum developed for the students to participate in remote international will, or did you use existing curriculum and adapt with assistance of a supervising faculty?
Yes, we use existing curriculum because we didn't have time to create new curriculum specific to this international will experience. The way will is done within GPC, like I said, it was decentralized. So each academic division would have different, they have like the will officer. Sometimes they're faculty, sometimes they're not. They're the will practitioners, sometimes they're will faculty. And some faculty really, what they did is in the virtual, they did sessions with the student and as well as the company host. So when they were doing the learning, like what are the learning outcomes in the beginning, they had a joint session. So they, this is what the learning outcomes were expected by the end. So there was agreement and making sure the academic piece was highlighted, but with a lot of flexibility because we've never done this before.
Okay. Thank you, Ada. Thank you, Emily, and merci également, Michel. I don't see any other questions in the chat room, and I believe we are about 4 minutes away. So perhaps I will hand the baton back to Andrew for some closing remarks. Andrew and Martin.
Yes, thank you, Marie-Ève. Merci beaucoup tout le monde, and to our presenters. It's really wonderful to hear some of these outstanding outcomes and some of the ways in which you were able to benefit from the innovation funding that was available through the program. There was a statistic that Rhonda mentioned earlier that really caught my attention, and that was that 95% of the students who were participating felt that they were more prepared for future opportunities. And I think that's really wonderful and something that can really be a benefit of virtual opportunities. And of course, this is just a subsection of projects that were funded through the Innovation Fund. As I mentioned earlier, there were a number of others that really focused on different themes in different areas. We will certainly be doing more of these kinds of sessions in the future. I would like to highlight that we do have some of our colleges will be participating in our annual conference and presenting or discussing some of the projects that they were also working on in the context of the Innovation Fund. So the conference this year is April 26th, begins on April 26th through to the 28th. And we will also have some additional sessions related to the mobility program. So Very happy to see such great participation and interest. As I mentioned earlier, we are anticipating to be able to share more concrete information about the next steps of the program in the months to come. If you have any questions or any comments, anything you'd like to share with us, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Marie-Ève, to Martin. If you're currently working with us through the innovation program, you certainly know where to find us. If not, I will put my email address in the chat box, and I'd be happy to hear from anybody who's interested in getting involved or may have some comments or anything else to share. So with that, just another big thank you to everyone. We will share a recording of the session afterwards, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And again, thank you very much to our presenters for your time.